Hello everybody and welcome back to Safari Mack Explores North America. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're saying goodbye to North America for a little bit and we're on our way to Alaska by taking a little shortcut through the Canadian coastline of the Northwest Pacific region. So, today I'd like to introduce you to our special travel buddies, the humpback whale, or otherwise known by their Latin name of Megaptera novangeli. You know, when this creature comes to my mind, I see a creature that has elegance, beauty, kind of majestic look to them, as well as a kind of grace, as they are known as some biologists studying these animals have observed them being able to be sleeping upside down and not even disturb a single grain of sand down at the bottom of the ocean. So enough about that, and let's go diving with the whales. But before we do that, as always, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for more content on tips on how to go green, or even or projects that you can do in your backyard. And finally, if you have an animal that you would like me to do in the future, or if there's a question that you have, all you gotta do is just send me an email, and you'll find it always down in the description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's start off with their family and their evolution. So this whale is a unique first, as this is not a toothed whale, but a baleen whale. What that means, though, I'll explain a little later. For starters, let's go back. Just a little special reminder. If you haven't seen it yet, I do have a very special episode on how whales as a whole evolved from land-based animals to become one of the ocean's most successful marine mammals. So if you want to check that out for yourself and learn a little more about their evolution, all you gotta do is check out the link, which I've also left for you down in the description below. But let's go past that and let's talk about of more recent. So picture yourself 36 million years ago in the oceans. Back then, there was no such thing as filter feeders. Instead, every whale was toothed, so every whale was a killer. But around 23 million years ago, it's believed that these whales, some of them, actually began to lose their teeth and had to evolve new ways of feeding themselves. So one of this was an idea called suction feeding, where they would just suck in water with the food that they were after into their mouths. But now, if they didn't have teeth, what did they use to, in a way, contain this food? Not just their mouth. So for starters, here's a fun way to picture it. Picture yourself with no teeth in your mouth, but instead a mustache. Basically, that's what baleen is. It's basically keratin, so the same material that you would find in your fingernail as well as your hair, and so on and so forth. So baleen has helped these guys evolve and has helped them survive for millions of years as they've evolved different ways of feeding themselves. Now, humpback whales were thought to have originated in the southern hemisphere around 880,000 years ago, but then around 200,000 to 50,000 years ago, these guys would eventually begin to colonize the northern hemisphere as well. Today, you can find them all over the world and all the Earth's oceans and seas, with a few exceptions of enclosed seas, like maybe the Mediterranean or the Red Sea. Not exactly the idea, as eventually they may be shut off and will eventually dry up. Now let's talk about their habitat, lifestyle, and their family life. Now this may surprise you, but not all whales are actually known to be social. Humpback whales, for most of the time, usually are solitary, but they will travel together every now and then when on migration, and they are known to cooperate. They are known to exhibit cooperative feeding behaviors when they're with their bubble nets. But we'll get to that a little later. For starters, let's talk a little bit about their migration patterns. So as I've already said back in evolution and family, you've got your humpbacks in the northern hemisphere, and then you've got your humpbacks in the southern hemisphere. But their migration and the reasons and their habits during their migrations are always the same. So here's what I mean. So during the summer months, or the winter months, humpback whales from the north will head down south, while humpbacks in the southern hemisphere will travel up north. During this time, they are coming together for one purpose: breeding and giving birth, as well as escaping the extremity of the cold. But during this time, they're not eating. They're not eating a bite. And then, by the time the summer months, so for us right now, while down in the southern hemisphere, it'll be around December and such, they will go back up to their northern or southern feeding grounds and will feed as much as possible. Because, as I've already said, during that time down when they're in their wintering grounds, they're not eating a bite, just not enough to go around. Now, humpback whales, usually females and will travel together in what we would call cow herds, while you have like that top male humpback whale, which we'll call the bull. He is following along, seeing if any of them are ready to breed, and he is called the escort. So the escort usually has access to breeding with the females that are ready to become mothers, while he also keeps in line the other males, which are called challengers, in line and away from the females, so as to prevent any other males from breeding. And then there's also the way in the backety back of the group. They are called the secondary escorts, and they usually will not have anything to do with the fights. They will keep their distance from the dominant male. So after around a pregnancy of 11 months, mom gives birth to just a single calf, and then they are known to nurse up for a year until they're ready to learn how to catch food. Yet it has been observed also that they are known to start eating around solid foods or adult food by the time they're around 6 months. So it never helps to have a little bite, as well as get into practice with hunting. Speaking of which, let's take a look at their diet and their hunting technique. Now, all baleen whales, despite their enormity, they only eat baby-sized food. For humpbacks, one of their top favorites is this tiny shrimp-like animal that's called krill. Krill. Just krill. Millions of these little guys. In fact, for a humpback whale, to keep their massive bulk going, they would need to eat up 1.5 tons of krill every day. But thankfully, they're not specialists or animals that stick to one kind of food. They're actually generalists, and they'll go after other schooling fish as well, such as mackerel or anchovies and even cod, especially those up in the northern hemisphere. But now let's take a look. How do they catch their food? So we already know it's a fact that these guys don't have teeth, unlike our previous Safari Mack guest, the orca. However, one thing that our previous guest, the orca and the humpback whales have in common, they work together to catch their food. Here's how it goes. So when humpbacks find big schools of fish or a big cluster of krill, they work together to catch them. How do they do this? For starters, some humpbacks will begin blowing a net of bubbles that confuses the prey and condenses them into a tighter ball. Then, when they're as compressed as possible, other humpbacks swim straight up in a torpedo shot, opening up their mouths and swallowing their prey whole. And so, if you're out boating and if you see bubbles starting to ring around you, get out of the way, because they are not stopping. I can promise you. In fact, more of these incidents have occurred on the news than I would care to count. And another special helpful use of their baleen is that this food gets stuck inside the baleen, but over time, this helps them kind of trickle it. This helps keep the water, they sift it through, and it goes straight down into their stomachs for digestion. Finally, let's end today with their influence in Pacific cultures. In Hawaii, they are considered to be guardians of ancestors and deities and other forms of ancestry. The Inuits believe that these animals are the providers of great sustenance, while finally, in New Zealand, the king of Maori actually signed an agreement that these humpback whales are legal people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time that I have for today, so join me next week for part 2. But until then, I'll see you all out there.